So I wasn't planning on making this video. I don't typically talk about games like this on this channel. I mainly talk about survival horror video games. But I've been playing Hogwarts Legacy ever since the deluxe version came out a few days ago, and I'm practically addicted to it. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why this is the most fun I've had in an open world RPG game in a very, very, very long time. I'm going to show you some raw gameplay. I'm going to get into my overall thoughts, but before I do that, consider subscribing. Like I mentioned before, I talk about survival horror video games on this page. You should check out my Dead Space review, or maybe my Callisto Protocol review. But I also do TV show discussions, trailer reactions, movie discussions, that sort of thing. So just consider subscribing if any of that seems of interest to you. And also, I want to let you know that I'm not too far into this game. I'm about 10 hours in, and it's some of the best 10 hours I've had in a video game in a long time. But with that being said, this review is basically covering my first impressions, my first 10 hours, because this is a massive game, and 10 hours doesn't even scratch the surface. And also, I'm not going to talk about any main specific plot points, but there is going to be gameplay in this video from the first 10 hours, so proceed at your own risk. So I want to start this video off by telling you what kind of Harry Potter fan that I am. And that is, I'm not. I really don't consider myself to be a fan of Harry Potter or the wizarding world in general. I don't dislike this franchise. I don't think it's bad. I've actually watched through the series twice, but only twice. And relatively recently too. I think the first time that I watched all the Harry Potter movies were only a few years ago. So I don't have much nostalgia for this franchise. I didn't grow up reading the books. I didn't grow up watching the movies. This wasn't the fictional universe that I was personally into. But with that being said, something about this game just called to me. It just spoke to me. As soon as I saw that first trailer, as soon as I saw the first gameplay footage, I knew that I had to play this game. And I'm so happy that that was the case, and I'm so happy that I did choose to play this game, because it's a game that's very rare these days. It's an RPG that just feels like it's so worth its price tag. It's just so full of life in a sea of video games that have been coming out these days that are just so devoid of life, so empty, so paint by numbers and boring. I want to talk about exploration first, and the exploration in this game is some of the best that I've seen in an open world RPG game in such a long time. Now, obviously, it's not the biggest map in the world, but what it is it's dense. It's a dense map, and I personally love that. Like, this might be kind of a cliche comparison, but my favorite video game of all time is The Witcher 3, and The Witcher 3 doesn't have the biggest map ever, but it has such a dense map, such a well lived in map. Everywhere you go, everything you see has meaning, and you feel rewarded just by exploring, just by looking to see what's around the corner, and it feels exactly the same way in Hogwarts Legacy. Again, I'm gonna compare it to just a lot of open world games these days, where the world is big, yeah, but it's empty and it's boring. And the missions that are there, the stuff that litters the open world in a lot of these new open world games, is just meaningless. There's no reason to do it. No reason for me as a player to care about collecting all the collectibles in generic open world game. But I'm so happy to say that Hogwarts Legacy does a dense open world right. Everything that I've seen, everything that I've interacted with, every side quest that I've done, everything I looked at, every letter that I read, every place I explored was rewarding. And it made me so happy that I took the time to do these things, because again, a lot of open world stuff, it feels like chores. It feels like you're doing chores on a chore list. Doesn't feel that way in this game. And this world just feels alive. Another thing that open world games don't really do well these days for the most part. When you're in Hogwarts and its surrounding areas, it feels like a lived-in world. The NPCs don't feel like NPCs. They feel like real people, real students, real teachers, real townsfolk going about their lives. And that's something that I was worried about before this game came out. I was worried that the NPCs would just feel like NPCs, that you would see a student standing in a specific part of Hogwarts, standing in one very specific spot, and then hours and hours later you'd come by and they'd be standing in the exact same place giving you the exact same dialogue. And again, that's not the case here, and I'm so happy to say that. You see NPCs in different areas. Like, you could see one specific NPC in a class, and then you could see them in a common room, and then you could see them in the Great Hall, and then you could see them at Hogsmeade. This world just feels alive. The NPCs feel like they're existing alongside you, and I love it. Now I'm going to talk about the combat. It's way better than I was expecting. I'm really happy to say that the combat feels like there is some sort of skill required to get by. This is not a button mashing game. You have to learn your spells, you have to study your spells, you have to work on your combos, you have to know when to dodge, when to parry, when to attack, when not to attack. The enemies are not the hardest in the world, but they're also not the easiest. I feel like this game found a perfect middle ground where you need to be skillful, but it's not super punishing to the point where it can get overly frustrating. But yet it does feel challenging, and it makes you feel rewarded when you finally beat a section or you finally beat a boss battle. And there's a great variety of enemies too. Again, I'm very early in the game, but I've already seen maybe 4, 5, maybe 6 different enemy types, and they all attack you in different ways. They all have different weaknesses, they all have different attack patterns, they feel unique, and I'm very glad about that as well. I'm not going to go too in-depth about the story. In fact, I'm not really going to talk about the story much in detail at all, but I will say that I am enjoying this narrative far more than I thought I would. It's already got its hooks in me. I'm already invested in so many of the plot lines, so many of the main characters, so many of the side characters, and the characters are great so far. There's so many memorable characters all throughout Hogwarts, teachers and students alike. And not just in Hogwarts, but in Hogsmeade and the surrounding villages as well. You meet so many interesting, memorable people. This game really encourages you to just go out of your way and talk to people. And there's just so much to do in this game. You never feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you never feel bored. You can take classes and learn new spells, you can sneak around libraries, or you can just embark on the grand adventure of the main plot line. Or, just as importantly, when it comes to playing an RPG game, you can just live. Like, there was huge chunks of this game, hours of this game, where I didn't do a main story quest. I didn't go out of my way to do any specific side quest. I just decided to wander around and see where the adventure took me, and it's always rewarding and it always feels meaningful. Anyway, that's my quick and brief thoughts on Hogwarts Legacy after playing it for about 10 hours. Have you played Hogwarts Legacy yet? Do you plan to if you haven't, or does this game not look interesting to you in the slightest? Let me know in the comments. And like I mentioned at the start of this video, I don't talk about video games in general that much on this page, just survival horror video games. But if you liked this video, let me know. I might consider making videos about games that aren't just survival horror more on this page. But anyway, thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far.